Alrighty. Welcome in, everybody. How are we doing today? Welcome back to another live stream here on Celtics Digest. I'm your host, Bruce Velez, with my co-host, Patrick Billings, and we got some stuff to discuss about the Boston Celtics here in this latest stream, as there hasn't been much news really revolving around the team. We did have a video come out about Jayson Tatum and a little bit of good news revolving around his injury update, so if you've missed that, definitely go check that out. But we do have some stuff revolving around some players kind of coming in, some quotes, some maybe names that could be linked to the Celtics, and ultimately, with all of those things, I think the best way to kind of say all of them is it's getting out of hand with all of those. So that's where we come here with the title. That's where we're here to have these discussions, kind of looking at some things that are kind of getting a little bit overblown, I think, in our eyes, and we'll kind of discuss what that could really mean in this latest stream here. Patrick, once again, a great time to discuss the Celtics here with you on this Wednesday evening. How are you doing today?
Doing good, man. Hope the same for yourself. I mean, talk about dry. I mean, this news has been terribly dry. It sucks because there's a lot of, questions that we probably have that we're looking for the answers for, and I don't know if we're ever going to get them until probably September, so I'm hoping that we kind of get some spaced out stuff, and hopefully some of the guys that we're linked to don't end up with the Celtics. So,
yeah, you mentioned it's very dry. I think that kind of correlates as well with the Celtics having 15 full roster spots at this moment, and only having two guys that are non-guaranteed, and one of them being partially guaranteed to January, and just the uncertainty of who's going to be coming back on this roster, how they can free up space to sign guys. It's just really, really complex for the Boston Celtics. So they're kind of like stuck in a corner while all these other teams can kind of just like look and evaluate with their, smaller end contracts. Obviously, Summer League just concluded. There was one Celtic on the Summer League roster who did get an Exhibit 10-day deal. I believe it was Hayden Gray, one of the better defensive stealing guys in the NCAA. He is going to be going to the main Celtics on an Exhibit 10 going into training camp, trying to work out for their team. Most likely we'll be seeing him there. There'll probably be some other names that do trickle in there on that front, but on like the real Boston Celtics roster standpoint, there's not really much really circulating. So it's been really tough to really find out stuff besides just like speculating, making rumors, talking about, potentials that could work out for the Boston Celtics. And that makes it a little bit difficult kind of in this spot for us, Patrick. But you mentioned talking about a potential roster spot being open and someone that maybe has been linked to the Celtics that we're not the biggest fans of. I know some people in the Celtics media space and Celtics fan space kind of are. It's a little bit of a back and forth on what really people have a figure on this guy. So let's dive in and let's get into the latest. As we see here from this update from NBA Central is that the Ben Simmons sweepstakes are heating up. It's Ben Simmons sweepstakes, same sentence, kind of funny, but we are, almost a month into free agency, so with it dwindling down, maybe Ben Simmons is one of those premier names that teams are really looking at, and he's expected to make a decision on where he'll be taking his talents within the next week per Windhorst. The wording of this is just hilarious in my opinion. Anyways, apparently, Windhorst was told that he's probably going to make a choice in the next week with 4 teams coming up. The Sacramento Kings, the Phoenix Suns, the New York Knicks, and the Boston Celtics, with all 4 of those being connected. Now, it would make sense from a roster standpoint, I think, why the Celtics would be interested in a guy in Ben Simmons. Obviously, Jayson Tatum being out, you have someone to kind of fill in and play that power forward position. Also, Ben Simmons is a solid screen and roller, someone who could work pretty solid, I think, in the Celtics offense, obviously without not having a three-point shot. Could be a little bit used as a passing big man as well, something that the Celtics have lost with Luke Kornet and also potentially Al Horford here in free agency, as he's still mulling his options, and he's a solid rebounder. So I do think he kind of fills in some holes that the Celtics do have missing here, but the other contrast of it, Patrick, is obviously his commitment, his ability to kind of stay on the court as well. And if you're the Celtics, kind of in a little bit of a mishmash period, trying to take some flyers, I don't know if an injury-prone guy who, isn't really the best locker room or teammate person from what I really heard, plays a little bit lazy in my opinion. I don't think that's someone you want to be going out there and kind of getting as your last roster spot in my eyes. But what's your kind of takes from this?
Yeah, I can't believe it's not Central. Reading this, especially the teams that are listed, the Kings, the Suns, the Knicks, the Celtics, it's like I understand the assets of his game that have definitely been the best part of his point in his career. I mean, we've definitely seen how good he has been before, but obviously it's been a heavy decline since then with all the injuries and all those other questions, even if he was injured anyways. But, I mean, like you said, on the passing standpoint and maybe the rebound standpoint, I mean, he's standing at 6'10", 6'11". Even though the scoring isn't really there, I mean, I feel like the rebounding, the passing is still kind of there. I mean, he's not getting the amount of minutes that he was back in the day, but, I mean, he still shows some flashes on those two facets of his game. But other than that, I mean, when it comes to the offensive scheme, when it comes to scoring, it doesn't really seem like he fits too many, needs for the Celtics. He doesn't shoot any threes. I mean, maybe he could get some backdoor cuts. I could see him, if he was signed for the Celtics, maybe actually play the center position and just give him a different look, because they have their low post big. They have their shooting big, I guess you could say, in Luka Garza. So I guess if you just want a certain type of guy on the court for certain things at that time, then of course it gives you a couple of options. But if they do end up signing him for God knows why, I guess I could be delusional for a couple of weeks to gas him up a little bit, but at this point I really can't. But I mean, I don't know. I think he's probably the perfect fit for the Suns. They got that roster spot, right, Bruce? And I think you would love him over there.
Yeah, personally, I think this fit for the Suns is a little bit better than the Celtics, in my opinion. That's just where it kind of goes. The Suns do have a little bit of a logjam at that power forward position as well, but I do think he could be used as a little bit of a small ball five and could be worked pretty well in a pick and roll alongside Devin Booker, which would make a little bit sense. The team like the Knicks also kind of intrigue my eyes a little bit, needing that defensive wing. I know they have Pacome Dadier, who our good friend Chris Gallagher is a huge fan of over on Knicks Digest, but ultimately maybe they feel needed a little bit more of insurance with him. The Kings, it's the Kings. They'll be interested in anybody. I'm not really shocked that their name's kind of surfacing these rumors, but I don't think as a point guard he would be really worked for the Boston Celtics. I know that he's kind of strayed away from that a little bit more after Philadelphia, but when he was drafted, that was kind of my major concern with him. I thought he would have worked nice as a defensive wing, playing that power forward position all throughout his career as a rebounder, and he never really got to live to those expectations. Maybe that's something that's hindered, obviously, to all of his development and well, and how his teams are viewing him and stuff. But I think for the Celtics, like you mentioned, for the things that you mentioned that could kind of gas him up to make us feel delusional about him, I think for the couple weeks of hearing the signing could definitely feel me intrigued with all the positives we talked about. But also, like we mentioned here as well, there are some negatives, and Mouthpiece mentioned it here. Ben Simmons is a little bit of a quitter. He doesn't want him on our squad, and I think that added on fact with the injuries, with the Celtics still having Jayson Tatum out, and who knows what potential other injuries could happen to this roster going on to the season. I don't think that's kind of the big risk that you do take. And NJ saying, I swear if Mazzulla somehow makes Simmons works out first, he will be a legend for that. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's wild. Even him trying to fit into that offense, it just doesn't really seem like it'd be used as a vital piece for that. But like you said, could be used as a small ball five, could be used as that, defensive wing, screen and roller, someone that could be a vital rebounder, maybe even a little bit of a decent shot blocker as well on the low post and in the paint as well on the block for this Celtics team.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely not a small body, especially when it build, so he could definitely do some work down low. Maybe if he did come to the Celtics, Joe Mazzulla can do some magic and actually make him shoot with his dominant hand now. I mean, I don't know if you saw, Bruce, but Jericho Sims switched the way that he's shooting. He's shooting lefty now, and he was spanking corner threes in the workout. But I mean, classic. I mean, I know he's not on the Knicks, but that's like some Mitchell Robinson type of thing right there. Looking crazy in the offseason, and then you come into the regular season, he's doing none of those things. But
you mean Ben Simmons highlight that we see every summer?
Yeah, exactly like those ones. But Mitchell Robinson's doing the hezzy crossover step back threes. That's what I mean. If we see that out of Ben Simmons, if he signs with the Celtics, I might start being delusional with that too. But, I mean, if anyone can get someone to shoot, I guess it would be the Celtics, honestly. But I mean, I wouldn't really count on it just because of how bad he's been with it. But I think, like we keep saying, he can handle the ball. Like you're not too upset with him, like kind of having some ball security. Maybe he moves just a little bit too slow, but I still think that his passing is great. I think the rebounding facet of the game as well, because the Celtics do like having a ball handler, kind of bring the ball to the court and kind of get into their offense quicker, like we saw with Luke Cornett, kind of not getting any defensive rebounds and only worrying about the offensive ones. And he's letting Jayson Tatum kind of grab the ball, take it down the court, and set the offense up that way instead of having to get it to a point guard and then start everything up and you're losing time on the shot clock. So I think that's something that he could kind of bring to that, but I really don't see this as something that's too realistic for the Celtics to go out and do.
Yep, and not to mention the fact also that they have 15 roster spots. So if they were to bring in a guy like Ben Simmons as well, then the team has to try to find out a trade or has to waive potentially a J.D. Davison or a Jordan Walsh. And ultimately, if it comes down to having to try to waive one of those guys, I don't think that that's worth it. You could potentially do like what the Thunder did with Dylan Jones and trading him to the Wizards and then getting back another guy and waiving him. But I don't think that the Celtics, I mean, maybe that's something that they would consider, but I don't think that's something that's like necessary to consider to bring in Ben Simmons, right? So like we've kind of mentioned before, it does seem like it's a possibility. I wouldn't be shocked if it does happen with all the linkage and, the past trade rumors from the years past. But ultimately, and for the role that he could bring on a deal. But ultimately, I don't see it being that happening. And if it was, it would be a veteran minimum. So it wouldn't be too, hopefully, tantalizing as well for the Celtics. But Patrick, we got some more stuff to dive in and talk about here, as well as there's some more things kind of getting out of hand within this Celtics fan base. And one of those is revolving around someone that I know you're not the biggest fan of, but he is going to be coming and playing in Boston this season, and that is Georges Niang. He was traded, obviously, for Kristaps Porziņģis in the deal revolving around the Atlanta Hawks, and the reason why the Celtics made this move for Georges Niang, as we all know, was to duck the aprons, right? They wanted to get that contract on. They wanted to shed that Kristaps Porziņģis salary. We all talked about how the Nets were the only team that could take on Porziņģis salaries outright to do so. They worked a third team in to get that done because the Nets didn't want it. They found Atlanta to do it. All the less, Georges Niang, Massachusetts native, has just not been getting the love from those Celtics fans. And as we see here on this post, if I can pull it up, from Daniel Beaton, who was the first person to be on this, make sure he gets his credit because someone aggregated the post and didn't give him his credit. Mass native Georges Niang realizes that he's not winning any popularity contest in Boston following this Kristaps Porziņģis trade, and said on the OG show that they don't give a shit that I'm from Boston. You just took out the unicorn and replaced it with the minivan. I'm just public enemy number one. And when you put it like that, it does make sense, right? Porziņģis was, this fan favorite that kind of came in 2 seasons ago, helped the team win a championship, regardless of how you view if he was on the court or off the court, you really liked him. Not a lot of people are a big fan of Georges Niang for some instances with the team in the past, trying to trip Jaylen Brown and all of that, and especially getting away a big value contract for Georges Niang in a season where the Celtics are still looking to be competitive. People are kind of like, what? Georges Niang, he's going to make an impact? How can you explain this? Yada, yada, yada. But I do want to kind of say that it's getting out of hand if Georges Niang is saying this on a show and having to talk about this, because he just got traded to this team, and if this was any other franchise, I do feel like maybe some I can kind of discount because there'd be bigger franchises like the Celtics, but ones that are very popular tend to have these outliers that really stick out to really criticize. If this was a team like Memphis or New Orleans, they would be emphatic to have a guy that was in their hometown coming back to play for their team regardless of the situation. So I think that's something that Celtics fans need to kind of cool off on a little bit.
Yeah, I think they'll cool off more when the season starts. I think we talked about it when we were kind of doing some trade proposals about the idea of maybe a Dylan Brooks kind of coming in. And I think that he's public enemy number one when he's not on your team. But when he's on your team, he's the type of guy that you want because he's going to be scrappy. He's going to be annoying. You don't want to play against him. And hopefully he kind of brings that energy. I will say he looks a little bit slimmer in that video, so maybe that's a good sign. Maybe he'll actually be able to run up and down the court a little bit more. But, I mean, we looked at some of the stats. I mean, it could mean nothing, but he's one of the winningest players in the past couple of seasons in the NBA. So, I mean, he brings a winning mentality. He knows what it's like to be a part of a winning team. So that's definitely a plus, and he's going to bring that energy. And, I mean, his three-point shooting isn't terrible. I mean, he was great in college, I'll tell you that. But, I mean, other than that, I think that right now, I think everyone was just kind of annoyed and didn't really understand the situation about dropping off Kristaps and only getting back Niang. It kind of seemed like, what the fuck are we doing? Honestly, that's really just what it sounded like. Like, what are we doing? And I think that once the season starts, I think it'll kind of null and everyone will kind of get to like him a little bit more. I won't say that he won't be a little bit hated, but I think that the hate will kind of die down a little bit more. And
I'm hoping so for Georges Niang, because I'm kind of, as you were kind of describing him and talking about how he plays and how he can kind of fit into this team, I kind of saw a mold of Georges Niang for this Celtics team here. And you can steer me in the wrong direction if I'm gassing him up a little bit too much here in this regard. But we saw Al Horford and Xavier Tillman kind of play this like stretch 4, kind of like rebounding 4. I think that's what Georges Niang can kind of be for this Celtics team here this season, right? If you have someone like that who's making $8 million and playing 12 to 20 minutes a game, I don't think that's too detrimental for this roster. Now, ultimately, if he was the starting power forward for this Celtics team here, I would have a little bit of concerns, and I don't know how ultimately this roster is really going to shake up, because there still is time till training camp, right? There still are potential moves that could be, breaking down left and right that we do see that we have not really heard of or being reported. But from what we can kind of tell, it does seem like he might play a valuable role off this bench for this Celtics team, and I think that's going to be pretty solid for his ability to be a pick and pop shooter from the three-point range. He can work into the pick and roll, something that the Celtics do utilize a lot and have as that kind of spacing shooting big. And I really like this outcome for Georges Niang in this kind of one season with the Celtics, because I do think as well he's a player that making $8 million, he's worth it, but I don't think it's going to command a big value either. So if he has a good season with the Celtics team, like you mentioned, where he can kind of get some of those fans to maybe rub off him on the good side and kind of maybe enjoy his play, then we could see a guy like Georges Niang maybe signing to like a 3-year, $12 million contract down the line, which could be beneficial for the team playing a very vital role, or maybe a 3-year, $18 million contract, something like that could help out them for both parties.
Yeah, I definitely kind of like the Al Horford type of role when you're kind of talking about it. I mean, maybe not the better rebounder whatsoever. He's going to be down low. He's going to be boxing guys, not kind of getting guys out of the way. But maybe not as a passer as well. But I see like what you're talking about. I mean, he really is just more of a spot-up shooter, to be honest, at his worth. And I think like we think, like if we're going to go downhill this year, kind of stray away from shooting a lot of threes, I think that he'll have a lot of opportunity and a lot of wide-open threes as well. Kind of like would you consider like a PJ Tucker role, kind of just sit in the corner, your spots, you're going to hit from those spots, and that's the type of guy that he'll be. Yeah. I think that's a fair comparison as well. So I think that's what we'll expect from him. And like you said, $8 million isn't like that much money, and it's only the 1 year. And if they don't like him, you don't got to worry about him next year because he won't be around. And I mean, Brad Stevens' big thing was getting out of that second apron. Right now, we're just into it, and we expect moves whether they come off in the offseason or right before the trade deadline in February. So I think there's still going to be moves to be made, and I think just kind of going into the season, lower expectations, kind of especially with Georges Niang, and hopefully he kind of turns into a number one for the other guys instead of ourselves.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. And I like that comparison to kind of PJ Washington kind of sitting in the corner, kind of just being that opportunity beast for the Celtics team. I think that's what PJ Tucker. Sorry. Yes. I think that we'll kind of see him kind of being that kind of for this Celtics team kind of in this season. And then like you mentioned, right, $8 million they're trying to get under the second apron. That's a tradable contract as well for the Boston Celtics to potentially use. They're out there on the open market to kind of potentially drop if they do need to kind of shed some money. And then lastly, Patrick, the last thing that's been getting out of hand, which unfortunately we had to bear witness. I think looking at this picture might be out of hand itself. Looking at that background, oh my God, I can't even. I threw up when I saw the jersey swap when it came out. Like, I saw the Zach Lowe tweets. I saw everything before. So I was like, no way he's signing there. And then I saw the Sean Street and I was like, no. And I fell to my knees. And I actually threw up when I saw this. But as we know, Marcus Smart, former Boston Celtic, someone who was my favorite player on the team for a very long time. I think a lot of people can have that sentiment as well. Has gotten a buyout with the Wizards and now is signing with the Los Angeles Lakers. And in his interview with the Lakers, he said that he's expecting a lot of boos and a lot of hate, which is okay, and he understands it, and what he expects from Celtics fans. And with the other ones, we said it was getting out of hand because we didn't want to have that happen. We didn't want those things. But if I hear anyone booing Marcus Smart at TD Garden, if I'm at that game, I'm slapping them. There should be no boos, no nothing for Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart was traded from this Celtics team. He did not actively campaign to leave this team. They did not want to trade him in the first place. They tried to trade Malcolm Brogdon at first, and then they ultimately had to throw in Smart because of the contracts and because they had to get the deal done with Porziņģis because of his contract extension and stuff like that. The deal had to be done that day. A couple off seasons ago to get those trades done. Tatum posted he was his brother. He would always want him back. When Smart was potentially getting this buyout and teams were looking at him as a positive buyout candidate, a lot of Celtics fans wanted him back in Boston. So I don't understand why he's really saying this, because I don't think this is going to be the sentiment that those fans are going to be showing in Boston.
Yeah, I think he's kind of wants to be booed. Honestly, it kind of feels that way. Maybe just one boo and then that's it, just because he said it now. But I don't think he's gonna get a lot of boo. Every time he comes into the arena, even though he was sitting on the bench hurt, he was always getting some cheers. So
Yep.
I always have a spot in Celtics fans' heart. Definitely has one in mine. I mean, I was hoping that one day his jersey would be hanging up because that's how much he meant to me as a Celtic and just what it's like to be a Celtic. I mean, we can never count out that he'll ever be back, but he saw an opportunity that he had to take. We don't know how many teams were necessarily looking at him, and for someone that's of his age now, I mean, he's been to a championship, sadly lost in 22, but he's looking for a ring, and I think that he saw the best opportunity in front of him. Maybe if he had the opportunity with the Celtics, with Jayson Tatum being out, there is really not as big of an opportunity than there probably is with the Lakers, if we're being a little bit realistic here, just because of how Jayson Tatum is with his injury and what the roster is going to look like even come February with things going to change. So I'm glad that he's kind of, talking about he understands the situation, and I hope that he could get one day, and I hope it's not with the Lakers because Rondo already did that to me, and we can't do it again.
Yeah, we cannot have that happen. Not to mention, you just brought up Rondo. What is the Lakers' fascination with ex-Celtics guards? They have Rondo, they had Smart, IT, Avery Bradley. They just are going through that gutter, that mill, just siphoning through, trying to figure out who's going to be that next guy for us.
I swear to God, Bruce, if Al Horford's next, we're going to have issues.
Yes, we're going to have issues. I'm going to actually go on strike and start petitioning against the Lakers over on social media. Anyways, regardless of that fact, Marcus Smart, like you mentioned, I know that teams that were interested in him were the Suns and the Bucks. I think the Lakers present a better opportunity to kind of reach a championship for that than those teams. We also know that Luka was apparently the biggest person and advocator for Smart to kind of get him there. He was recruiting him heavily. So if you're going to boo anybody from Marcus Smart at TD, boo Luka extra hard, not only for the Mavs, not only for going to the Lakers, but boo him for recruiting Marcus Smart, because if it wasn't for Luka, Marcus Smart most likely would not be a Los Angeles Laker. But besides all that fact and all that mentioning, like you talked about, not only did that hinder the Celtics' opportunity to get him, but he got a $5 million deal. As we've talked about, the Celtics have no roster spot, and if they do have a roster spot open, they have to give a veteran minimum contract. And I don't think that Marcus Smart is worth a veteran minimum at this point. I do think he's worth a little bit more, and I think potentially he can get even more if he is healthy, because post-Celtics, he hasn't been able to stay healthy on the Wizards and Grizzlies. So if he is able to stay healthy within this Lakers team, could potentially get a little bit of a higher payday than the $5.5 million that he does get. But that was even resemblant with the Damian Lillard situation, because the Celtics were linked to him and wanted to get him, but were unable to because, as you saw, as he got the full MLE from Portland, there were just more teams that were offering more, and if the Celtics were to pull off a move, they weren't going to be able to offer him that money. So it's just tough for the Celtics in these situations with guys like Damian Lillard, guys like Marcus Smart, guys that, maybe were on their radar, potentially could have been on their radar, with how their rosters kind of shaped up, and like we mentioned as well, with the direction of Jayson Tatum being injured and kind of being a middling season, they're kind of stuck in just nowhere land this season, which is a little bit similar to last year with them winning a championship and not really making any moves as well.
Yeah, I think last year they knew they weren't going to make any moves.
Yes.
And I mean, we were talking about it all season long. We didn't think anyone was going to go anywhere, especially if they won the championship.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's back. I don't know if that could have been possible, honestly. I mean, unless they preferred to just eat it at that point, then maybe. Other than that, I mean, it seemed like we were pretty screwed, and we still are with a lot lesser talent on the team, being in the second apron still. But, I mean, man, just going back to Marcus Smart, I'm, like, losing my train of thought just staring at him.
Here, I got you. I'll take us off Marcus Smart there.
Yeah,
because it's...
No, but, I mean, like we've talked about, like, with Marcus Smart, I think he still lives in Boston. I believe he still helps out in the community in Boston, so he definitely still loves the city, and I really don't think he's going to get booed, and, yeah, I'm nauseous. But yeah, I mean, Marcus Smart, hopefully he'll end up back in Boston one day. I think the cards will play right that he ends up back, and maybe it'll be in that 2027 year. Maybe when everyone's already reloaded, come back, just join the squad. I mean, hopefully he's playing and not just like a coach, but I would love to see him back in the Celtics colors, because that is disgusting.
Yeah, I'm all for team optimism. I ride the team optimism wave over on the Suns fan base with all the disastrous things that have been happening this past season, and I will remain optimistic on that, because you see Damian Lillard going back. You see CP3 going back. Where's our Marcus Smart comeback? That's what a lot of people were talking about this offseason. We did not see it happen, but I like how you illustrated potentially in the future 2027, maybe even 2028, something like that for Marcus Smart on a nice veteran minimum or close to, veteran minimum contract, playing that defensive, scrappy, kind of secondary defensive guard for the Celtics team in a deep playoff run. I think would be absolutely fantastic. I think the fans would welcome him back with open arms, because I think you displayed it perfectly when you were describing Marcus Smart, how you growing up wanted to see his number go into the rafters because what he did and how much he resembled what being a Boston Celtics was, diving for those loose balls on the floor. I vividly remember that game versus the Houston Rockets where he got those charges on James Harden and got those fouls to will the Celtics back in the comeback. And that's what you appreciate with those guys for the Boston Celtics. And I think they obviously see those intrinsics with a lot of their players that they draft and kind of bring in for this lifestyle. But then with losing Smart, kind of get it ripped out. But I would love to see him back.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple memories for me are the buzzer beater against the Nets where he actually dished the ball off, because there's a lot of times where he's taking the last second shots. He's like, no, I'm the guy. I'm going to go for the game winner. So that's definitely one of them as well. And I mean, that James Harden one is unforgettable, but just literally his motor and everything, it just screams Boston Celtics. And that's why, even if he doesn't end up coming back, I'm still have this hope in the back of my head that he'll still have something up in the rafters, because it's well deserving. Honestly, I mean, he didn't get the championship. I mean, Kevin Garnett got it. He got his jersey retired, but I mean, that's a total different story regardless. But like we keep mentioning, man, this is just brutal. I can't even think, dude. I don't even know what to say, honestly. Get me done talking, please.
I got you. We can turn away from the Marcus Smart heartbreak, unfortunately. But like you mentioned, hoping that he can be back in Boston. Patrick, the last thing I'll ask you here that we'll kind of talk about, because we went over some things. There's one kind of uncertainty prospect that we highlighted a little bit here when talking about in this last stream. That's still Al Horford, who's still out there on the free agent market. There were some reports coming from the last couple of weeks I saw where the Warriors expected him to sign there already. Then there were some reports from the Summer League where someone on NBA TV was saying that I wouldn't count the Warriors all in on Al Horford, and the Celtics could potentially get him. Brad Stevens has basically said that they think they've lost Al Horford. There's just a lot of uncertainty revolving around him. Obviously, he could potentially retire. Golden State hasn't made a move yet because they have their Jonathan Kuminga situation that they're dealing with. So there's a lot of question marks up in the air revolving around what they're going to do and the plausibility of him coming back. My question kind of to you is I obviously still have my hope. I think you have your hope of the possibility of him returning. But where would you say you think he lands?
Retirement at this point. I think that he's taking a lot of time to think about things, and he doesn't want to move on from Boston. And if Boston is in this terrible situation, which they are, where they have no roster spots open, they don't really seem to have too much of a set direction right now, if it's more of a retool or if it's a rebuild and what they're looking ahead to do, because they're still in that second apron like we keep saying. I think he's just taking some time off with his family and just really kind of just looking at his options. And if it's really just the Warriors and retirement, does he really want to go all the way out to California when he's at the end of his career, leaving a place that he wanted to stay in for the rest of his career? Just talking about it out loud, it doesn't seem too realistic at this point. I think that he's really more towards the retirement part of aspects. It's crazy to think about, because maybe if Jayson Tatum never got injured, he'd probably be back next year.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the big question mark surrounding, obviously, is the Jayson Tatum injury, because I think he would have already been signed here already. And then you mentioned, I think there's still hope for me, and I still believe that there's the possibility just because he's taken so long, like you've highlighted. And I still think that, even though Brad Stevens has kind of counted that out, it's just kind of to just shut the situation down and kind of make it kind of quiet for now. And then we can see something kind of transpire. If they do make a move, they are able to pull a rabbit out of their hat, making a trade or something like that, and they have that flexibility to sign him, then they can. But I just find it hard to see Al Horford retiring. But like you mentioned, I don't see it like him signing a one-year deal with the Warriors and then coming back to the Celtics next season and leaving his family for a season. I find that very difficult too. So ultimately for me, I'm going to say that he's going to go to the Warriors just because I do think he's going to play. But it just still remains uncertain, and it's really difficult to even talk about and have this discussion, because you don't really know what's happening, and you're just hoping for the best for Al. But until he really makes a decision and it's final on paper, or you see a tweet from Shams or Michael Escato, you just have to have the, I guess, hope that he can come back.
Yeah, like you keep saying. I mean, I totally think that the Warriors are the one that's most in play, but us just talking about it out loud, it really just makes me think about what he's actually doing right now in this process. The fact that they expected him to already be signed at this point, but also looking at it a little bit, this is kind of like where I'm kind of taking it a little bit too far, but with the whole thing with Bassey kind of being off the roster, and if they don't even want to have an open roster spot for him, it's like they don't even want to go young. They don't want to bring back a veteran. So clearly the roster looks like he's going to stay put. So it's really like, all right, is he going to retire, or is it just the Warriors? Now that he was already expected to sign, is he really just thinking about just retirement right now and hanging out with his family? Because I think that plays a huge part in everything. If he's living over in Boston, which I don't know. I don't know where Al Horford lives. I'll expect that he's in Boston because of how many years he's been there for. His son, always on the bench for Boston, loves Boston. Is he going to want to leave all of that to go to the Warriors for just 1 year, knowing that they'll probably not win a championship? He's just playing because he still loves the game. That's just the question that I'm having, and I feel like retirement is just more of a likely standpoint at this point than going all the way over to California.
Yeah, and that's a difficult decision. You mentioned Bassey, who completely slipped my mind. The mystery man from the Summer League. He just didn't even play in those final 2 games for the Summer League. As we know, he only was committed to 3 games, then had a other requirement that he was scheduled to do. That's why he was not with those Summer League Celtics for the last 2. But he hasn't signed anywhere. He hasn't gotten a guaranteed contract to my knowledge. So someone else to keep an eye on as well for the Celtics revolving around as a name. Maybe he's kind of on the back burner. Maybe he goes overseas if he's got something guaranteed. Just something to monitor within this Celtics rotation, as there's just a lot to keep an eye on. Even with it being very dry like the Sahara Desert, Patrick, it's just all eyes on just whatever could potentially happen for this Celtics team, as we are in what they would call the dog days of the NBA offseason. July 23rd, not really happening, but it's been great to break down the Celtics and look at some fun stuff at least, right? We talked about Ben Simmons, we talked about Georges Niang, we talked about Marcus Smart, even went in a little bit on Al Horford as well. I do appreciate everyone kind of being here in the chat. We rose up to around 50 people here in the stream today, which was absolutely fantastic. So thank you guys so much for hanging out here and always being here with us. We really do appreciate all the support here on the channel. Once again, thank you guys for being here. We'll catch you guys next Wednesday, hopefully with some news, but if not, Patrick and I will figure out something to break down.
If not, be prepared with questions.
Yes.
Type of questions that you have with the Celtics, with anything going on with the salary cap, with the roster space, or any type of, trade probabilities, or any free agents we're trying to open up some spots, we could give you our takes as well, but we love to hear yours as well.
Yes, 100%. I like that from Patrick, because the questions are definitely going to be needed, as well as ultimately that will build up some time and actually get into some discussions with you guys as well, making it more interactive. So like I said, Patrick said, be prepared with questions next week if there's not a lot of news, and you guys will be in tap with all of it.
Get tests next week.
But thank you guys so much for tuning in once again. Have a great rest of your evening. If the Celtics do have some news come out in the next couple of days, we will have some videos regarding it on the channel, so make sure to stay up to date by hitting that subscribe button, as you guys have been absolutely fantastic. We hit our goal of 7,000 subscribers. We're slowly closing in on 7.2K, which would be absolutely fantastic, and then hopefully getting to our goals of obviously 8 and then 10,000 subscribers. So once again, appreciate you all for showing your support. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your night,